Tamamdır, başlıyorum. Okay, I think since you're the only one, I'm gonna just directly ask you this question. Can you, for everyone's knowledge, tell us a bit about yourself and then maybe tell us which master's program that you're currently in, or of course you finished, which country and which university it was?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Burak Çoşkun. After growing up in New York, Istanbul, and Sakarya, I came to Bilkent University in 2015. I started in the economics department. And I graduated in 2019 and went directly to the University of Oxford's Master's in Financial Economics program.
Well, those sound great. And how did you decide to do a master's or, a PhD program?
Well, so I actually came into the department wanting to go into academia. It's probably the effect of having a professor for a father, but yeah, originally my intent was to do a PhD, do cutting edge research and maybe win a Nobel Prize down the line. Everybody's dream, right? But then I figured out that from second year theory courses that I don't actually like economics itself all that much. But I really did enjoy like the statistical parts, the empirical parts, and the financial markets aspect of it. So, I decided to go into finance. And sure enough, I also knew that I wanted to work in the private sector, but I wanted to work abroad as well. So I decided I'm going to do a master's abroad. And then I applied to MIT, Oxford, LSE, London Business School. What else? Vanderbilt in the United States. And sure enough, after getting rejected from MIT, once I got my Oxford acceptance letter, I decided, yeah, I'm going to go for it.
All right. Since you talked about, like you said, once I realized that I was not that interested in the academia and also I want to continue in financial field, then like my question is, can you like walk us through your course load that you took from, let's say, from freshman year to senior year? How did you divide your electives, and like which courses would you consider as a must, let's say, for masters in your field, or any course that would be beneficial for that field as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting from the first year, CS 123 is definitely the most useful course that Bilkent offers, believe it or not. It's the most practically applicable thing that you can learn. I actually took the statistics courses one semester early. So I took statistics 1 in the spring semester of my freshman year and statistics 2 in the following summer. I think Deniz and I were in the same class actually. So, getting a good background on statistics is really essential. But besides that, for, all forms of graduate level economics, you probably need a lot of math. So math 225 in particular was a big one. Linear algebra, differential equations, you use that pretty much everywhere. But besides that, a lot of econometrics, econometrics 1, 2 applied, all of them are very useful in finance and absolutely essential, I would say. Most of what you do in finance is time series economics anyway, so econometrics 2 in particular. But besides that, my unrestricted electives were mainly made up of finance courses from the business department. Yeah, so those were a nice addition. And plus, it's not as academically rigorous in the business department as it is in economics. So it's a good GPA booster as well. Yeah, basically, I'd say that's about it.
Okay, so those were your courses. And
before that,
can I extra? Sure.
Can I ask something about the courses that you just mentioned? I think like in the series, we realized that for some of us, especially the ones who went to Erasmus, I know that you went to Tilburg, so you probably had courses that were related to finance due to the structure of the university. But for most of us, I think we are going to take the electives that we are actually really interested in our last year, in our senior year. And in that case, like maybe some of the courses will not be seen in our application, and some of them will only be seen as like taken, but the grade will not be shown. Do you think that's going to have a negative effect on our application, or how can we fix that issue?
Well, I'd say it doesn't have to be that way. So the way I did it was I tried to postpone the economics courses that I didn't like as much as possible into my fourth year. And I filled up my second and third year with unrestricted electives. Yeah, Erasmus also obviously is a big factor, but they don't even see your grade for Erasmus. So it just signals that you actually like the field enough to take an elective course on it in Erasmus. But yeah, trying to take them from early on would probably be your best bet.
Okay, so what kind of extracurricular activities have you done, and also internship and research while your undergraduate studies, and how beneficial do you think it was, and how much of a problem can not having these would create?
Okay, so I'll start from the internships because they're more essential, especially if you're looking into the private sector. So I did 2 first-year internships actually. It was a long summer. So one in the Turkish Ministry of Economy in Ankara, and the second in an automotive manufacturer's accounting department. For the second year, I did an internship at a commercial bank. And at the third year, for my third year internship, I was at the Boston Consulting Group in its Istanbul office. And that's probably the key differentiating factor. So I actually got to meet the admissions committee to the university and, tried to just pick their brains a bit to figure out what it is that they're looking for. And I can easily say that the Boston Consulting Group internship was certainly the differentiating factor for me. When it comes to extracurriculars, well, the most notable one, I think, was that I started Turkey's first student-managed hedge fund, actually illegally, while at Bilkent. So, in fact, we had a bit of a quarrel with Burç Hoca about this back in my third year. The department didn't want to get involved because of the Capital Markets Board of Turkey butting in and bringing in all sorts of restrictions and fining us and whatnot. So what we did was get a group of about 15 people. We met up on weekends and we basically had the student managed investment fund going. I did that during my Erasmus semester in Tilburg as well. Other than that, I was lightly involved in the management and economics community, MEC. I was in MUN, Model United Nations. I won a few prizes there. As far as how important the extracurriculars goes, I would say that the student managed hedge fund, investment fund was definitely a big one. It shows your passion. It shows that you're willing to break your rules to pursue the finance field. So I think that was a pretty big one. That one had a pretty dramatic effect. But as far as the others go, they're nice to have, but they're not essential. But on the other hand, if you're trying to get into something research related, then having research as an extracurricular activity, then yeah, that would absolutely be essential.
Thank you.
All right. And then I suppose the next question is going to be, I think we asked this before, but can you tell us a bit about your research process in terms of universities? Because you said you applied to maybe 5 or 6 universities. How did you decide to apply to those universities, and maybe which sites or sources that you have used to look up these information?
Yeah, so honestly, I was very superficial in applying to universities. I'm not going to lie about that. I looked up which universities have programs that are of interest to me. So financially, economics, finance, financial engineering even. I sought out the universities that have those, and then I basically put them into a rank order based on their QS and Financial Times rankings. Of course, I also looked at the employment outcomes and whatnot. And, I tried to reach out to people in each university, in each program, to get an idea of what it would be like. And as a result of those, I narrowed it down to 5, 6 different programs, applied to all of them, interviewed at 3, and got in at Oxford.
About that, when did you start actually researching these universities? I understand you understood that you want to pursue finance early on. Mm-hmm. By early on, you mean?
So I knew I wanted to do a master's in finance from my second year, probably.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, by the third year, I already knew like the average GRE, GMAT scores, the average GPAs of every program that I wanted to apply to. So yeah, early on, the earlier the better.
Okay.
I know that we have already asked you about your internships, but let's suppose that if we're planning to do a master's and having an internship in only in the private sector, would this be a negative effect on how our resume would look, or
Well,
can it be positive? What can
well,
you
it
say
would,
about that?
if it's a research master's, I mean, I can't really speak for them because I'm not part of a research master's program, but I imagine it would be somewhat problematic for a research master's program because, you know, that the very purpose of going there is uh, to expand your research skills. And, you know, if you don't have background in that, well, how do you know it's right for you? So um, if you're going for a research master's, then I'd say that would probably be problematic. I think Deniz could provide more input on that if she comes. But for like a private sector focused master's program, no, it's pretty much expected. I did have some research experience actually with Hakan Berument, you know, the Energy Policy Research Center. I think that also had a positive effect because I got a good recommendation letter out of that one, and I got to present to like some important policymakers. So I think that provided an advantage in my particular case, but if you're going for a private sector focused master's, then no, I'd say it's not essential.
All right. I don't know if that's the case for your at least field, but in the previous seminars, we maybe realized that from our understanding, at least so far, GPA was the main like component that was effective in your acceptance to any master's program. Do you think that was the case for your program? And also, like, what do you think was the importance in addition to GPA of the reference letters and the motivation letters? And also, how does it differ in Europe versus UK?
Okay. So again, since I don't have much experience with Europe, I can't really speak about the differences between Europe and the UK. But the order of importance would probably be GMAT and GPA are number one and of equal importance. Then would come the one's internship experience, and then the letter of motivation. The recommendation letters probably come in fourth and fifth, somewhere near extracurricular activities, probably. But you know, if you have bad recommendation letters, then yeah, they're going to make a world of a difference. You're not getting in probably. This is assuming that your recommendation letters are at least decent.
All right, thank you. And next, I want to ask you about the examinations that you had to took in
Mhm.
order to get into the master's program, like language examinations or like the GRE. Can you tell us about a bit of those? And what was the threshold for these exams from your institution?
Mhm. Yeah, so you have to either take the GMAT or the GRE, though more people take the GMAT. And I personally prefer that format. You know, I don't like memorizing vocabulary words. I like the critical thinking aspect of GMAT more. So I took the GMAT. The average score, if I recall correctly, is around 730. And I think that would probably convert to about 330 on the GRE. I'm not sure. The quantitative aspect is really important. They want a near perfect quantitative score. The verbal aspect, they can overlook it as long as it's not too bad. So in my particular case, I was in the 98th percentile. Not sure how that exactly converts to a GRE score. There was an unspoken threshold around 680 for GMAT. I don't know anybody with under a 680 GMAT, but the average was about 730. So yeah, that covers the GMAT. Besides that, you also have to take the TOEFL exam. Yeah, it wasn't too much of a problem for me because, you know, I grew up speaking English. Do you want to hear my score?
If you're comfortable, I mean, sure.
I got a 117 on it, so it wasn't really anything to worry about. The threshold, I think, for Oxford is 109. For most other master's programs, it's around 100. For some in the United States, it's around 80, if I recall correctly. But I think Oxford has the highest TOEFL threshold that I know of, and that's 109.
All right. Then I suppose maybe we can ask, like, how was the application timeline for Oxford per se?
Mm-hmm.
Or
So
UK in general as well?
yeah, so by September, I had all of the exams all done. No, sorry, I did the TOEFL in December, actually. That's why I couldn't apply for the Jean Monnet scholarship. But yeah, the GMAT was done by September. I think I started writing the essays in early October, probably. I got my recommendation letters all done by the end of October. And by November, I had all of the applications sent. You know, the timeline is actually pretty important because there are multiple rounds of admissions. So the first round is probably easier to get into than the final round. Because, you know, when the final round comes along, it's people usually who are desperate who couldn't find anything else, so they study hard. There's more of a applicant pool, so they can afford to be more selective. So applying early on would definitely be beneficial.
So from my understanding, compared to Europe, at least, I mean, to my knowledge, UK is a bit earlier, right? The application process starts way earlier and I suppose finishes way earlier as well.
Yeah,
Is
as
that
far as I
correct?
can remember, there were people applying to masters in Europe in March, April, even May.
Yeah.
So yeah, for the UK, it is early. I know that it's actually quite a bit earlier in the US. So the last round in Oxford was, I think, March or April, probably.
Okay.
But yeah, they have like 3-4 rounds, so you can start as early as September if you want. For the United States, I know it starts like in the summer of your third year on some occasions. Yeah.
That train is gone, I suppose.
Is it? No, you're in the summer of your third year though right now, right?
Yeah, but the summer is almost gone, right?
Yeah, you'll be fine. I think they have their final deadlines, like the earliest final deadlines are in October or November in the United States, so you should be fine. You know, in fact, for MIT, I remember the final deadline was January. So
Okay.
that train isn't gone for you. Don't worry.
Okay,
All right,
so
Burcu.
you did all of this and got into your master's. And can you tell us a bit about your program and maybe the curriculum and the field of concentration before moving on to the detailed questions that we will get to in a minute?
So the curriculum of the Masters in Financial Economics program. So you have a 3-term year in Oxford. The first 2 terms are the core courses. So namely, they are financial econometrics, asset pricing, corporate finance, and economics. And well, they're intense, I can tell you that. There's a programming component in every single one of them. So you need to have your computer skills in check, and you need to know multivariable calculus, linear algebra, differential equations. Maybe not proofwriting, no need for real analysis and whatnot. I know that PhD programs kind of look into that, but you don't need that for us. And then in the 3rd term, we have electives in which you have more fun. You know, you can take MBA electives, the electives that MBA people are taking, so it's not as academically rigorous. So in particular, I took courses on options pricing, on real estate, on what else, financial crises and risk management. So you take a total of 9 courses over the course of a year, 4 core courses, 5 electives, and that's pretty much how it goes. And I think I just saw Deniz join.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm not in Istanbul. I'm not in Ankara. Sorry. I'm so sorry about this.
That's okay. That's okay. if you want, would you maybe like, Burak, if you want to continue, like you can continue the question and then we can ask like the previous questions to Deniz, and meanwhile you can just like chill and take your hour.
However you guys want it.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to add to the question we just asked?
No, that's about it.
Okay. Okay, then I suppose I'll just start with you, Deniz, in that case. Can you just like tell us a bit about yourself, which master's program you are currently in, at which school, and like which country?
Okay, yes. Me being late is not a representative of who I am actually. I graduated from Bilkent University last year, and I completed my master's at LSE, Econometrics and Mathematical Economics, MSc. And now I'm going to start a PhD program at Cambridge University this year.
Great. I mean, congratulations. And how did you decide to do the master's and the PhD?
So when I was an undergraduate student, I wanted to do a PhD. My aim was to do a PhD. So to do that, to go that route, I thought that doing a master's in a mathematical economics course would be beneficial to me. And I researched a lot, and I thought that masters in UK are more competitive with the US. So that's why I want to go to LSE, and LSE has a great program. The admissions were great there. So that's why I decided to go there.
Perfect.
And about PhD, as I said before, I wanted to do a PhD anyways. I found a professor at Cambridge University that I really want to work with. And so I emailed him, I talked to him, and I decided to go there.
Perfect. And also in that case, like in order to do that, which courses did you take from freshman year to senior year? And also like which courses would you consider as a must for your program at least, or anything that would be beneficial for your program as well?
Mm-hmm. So I think taking mathematical courses are a priority. If you want to directly go to PhD, I think real analysis is essential, but I didn't take real analysis when I was an undergraduate. I took advanced calculus, I took many other mathematical courses, starting from my first year as an undergraduate. And other than that, I took advanced macroeconomics. So more courses on theory and mathematics, I would say. Oh. But every case is different, and I believe that you should take courses where you feel more comfortable, where you feel you're most interested in, and your admissions are going to be different from everyone. So whatever you want, whatever you think suits you, when you get admitted, you would be appreciated that you did that.
Well, those are great advice. And what kind of extracurriculars activities that you've done during your time in Bilkent, and also the internship and the research while your undergraduate studies during those times?
I was a very nerdy student, so I didn't do much extracurricular activities. I was involved in a couple of groups during my first year as an undergraduate. I didn't really like any of them, so starting from the second year on, the only thing that I did was ERO, and that's basically it. About my internships, I went the first year as an undergraduate student, I did an internship at Ernst & Young. That was a 3-week program. That program taught me that I didn't like to be in the corporate field and that I wanted to do academics. And then starting from my second year on, every summer I went to MIT and I interned with Professor Darona Jamolu at MIT for a couple of months.
Perfect. Actually, I was going to ask something about like your research process, at least for applying for a master's, but I think you already talked about that. So since we talked about internships and also research opportunities, how did you find these, let's say, research opportunities during the summer? Like, what was the process like?
I think being a part of the community, the Bilkent community, going to seminars that professors go to, listening to current research, and trying to talk with professors after the seminars, having good contact with your teachers while taking classes, while taking courses, going to office hours, all of those helped a lot. About my internships with Professor Darana Jamola, that was a unique situation. Professor Darana Jamola came to Bilkent University, and I, believe it or not, I wasn't aware that he came to Bilkent University. I was walking down the corridor. I had a good relationship with Professor Refet Gürkaynak. And while walking down, I saw Professor Refet Gürkaynak and Professor Darana Jamola standing together. So I went up to them. I introduced myself, and then I stalked them while they were walking to Starbucks. I went to take a picture. I took a picture. A week later, I went to Professor Refet Gürkaynak, and I asked him if he could send an email to Professor Darana Jamola because I wanted to go and work with him for the summer. And he did. I emailed Professor Darana Jamola my CV, my transcript, and then I was admitted for the next 2 years. So I think you need to be outgoing. Opportunities come and go. It's upon you to take the opportunity and try to work on it. So being outgoing is very important, I think.
Okay,
Perfect.
and I know that you said like I did an internship at the private sector and you didn't quite enjoy it, or maybe not as much as the academic internships that you did.
Mhm.
But well, let's suppose that someone wants to do an internship in the private sector and also wants to do a master's degree. Would you say that that would have a negative effect on the masters?
The academic world is weird. Some people appreciate doing internships in the private sector, and some people think that you don't know what you want, and that's why you're doing a bunch of different internships. If you ask me, I think trying out things is very important because you will not understand without trying it. And the people who are going to look at your CV, I hope that they'll appreciate that you tried and at the end decided on whatever you've decided on. So I can't say anything certainly about the admission process and how your internship in the private sector would look. But as a friend or as an Bilkent alum, I would say that do anything that you think might interest you, and then eventually you'll find what you want. And if you become persistent in what you want eventually, so for example, I did an internship in EY, and I was lucky because early on I understood that that's not what I want to do. And then from the second year on, not only during the summers, but during the year as well, I worked on research projects with Dr. Sang-Seop Lee and Professor Refet Gürkaynak. And I think in my transcripts with the courses that I've taken and in my CV, I really underlined the fact that I wanted to proceed academically. And although I did an internship in the private sector, early on I was able to understand that that's not the path that I want to go through. But it's different with everyone, and just because you tried something out doesn't mean that you're not eligible to do anything else. So even after master's, while applying for PhD, I really thought about, do I really want to do this or not? What if I don't get accepted? What's going to happen? What type of other jobs? So always doing internships, talking with other people. It's never a negative, I think.
Thank you.
Since we talked about like maybe not being able to decide early on what you want, through internships or like research, do you think as far as like courses concerned, that is the same thing as well? Because I think I told the same to Burak. Most of us start to take courses that we're really interested in our senior year, and maybe some of them will not be seen in our transcript once we send them, like in this semester, and most of the grades will not be shown. Do you think that's going to have a negative effect as well, or as far as you can justify it, that is acceptable too?
I think it's different with masters and a PhD. I think you guys have a webinar series with a PhD later on. I think if you're directly applying for a PhD, then it's a bit different, because if you're applying to a PhD, then you're committing for a 5 or 6 year period long thing. So the 5 and 6 years, you're just going to do research, and they want to see that you really want to do research, and you're capable of doing so. So if you're directly applying to PhD, then it's a different situation. But for masters, I think masters it still gives you an opportunity to see if you want to do it or not. So I think with a master's, it's a bit more flexible. And even if you're doing a very academic master's like I was, I think writing on your cover letter the courses you're taking on the statement of purpose, sorry, not the cover letter, the courses you're taking and what you're doing the last semester as well. And most places will ask for your grades after they're announced anyways. So obviously if you can take courses early on, then it's better. But if not, then I think it's never late for anything.
Great. And also about like, if you wanted to rank the importance, at least for the application process of, let's say, GPA, reference letters, and also motivation letters, and Burak also mentioned like GMAT as well, how would you rank those things?
So as far as I understand, GRE it's just a cutoff. For example, in my program, the cutoff was 167 out of 170 in quantitative in GRE. So anything below that, even if you have a 4.0 GPA, you took real analysis, you did everything perfectly, you're cut off. So GRE is a must, and every university has a different cutoff. In the UK, I heard in general it's around 164, but it can differ from department to department. But GRE is definitely...
I'm sorry for interrupting, but what can you say about the verbal part?
Okay.
Does it really matter?
In the program that I went to, they told us after we were admitted that verbal, they don't even look at it. So what they basically do is they have an Excel sheet or whatever they use, and you know the sort thing. They say anything below 167 from quantitative is deleted. So they don't even look at your application. But verbal, they don't even look at verbal. So I don't know about Oxford. Maybe Burak can say something different about that, or maybe he already did. I'm sorry, but they don't even look at verbal most places, I think. So even if you don't do anything, I mean, I wouldn't suggest not doing anything, but that's what they told us after we were admitted at LSE. So verbal, I don't think is important. As far as GPA, I think again is mostly a cutoff, but also they look at the courses that you're taking. In Oxford, while I was applying to Oxford, I remember the cutoff was 3.80. And so anything below that, they won't even look at. But anything above that, they still look at your transcript and they see what courses you've taken. If you've taken like German, sculpture, and you ace those, and that's why your GPA is 4.0 or something extremely high, then they'll say you're not a very good fit. But if your GPA is lower, but you took very advanced courses, then I think you have a higher chance.
Just to add to what Deniz said, the cutoff for Oxford, I think that applies to the research master. So not my program in particular, because I got in with a 3.7.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to research, I think on the websites. they write it down clearly. In my master's, I think after I was admitted, my condition was a 3.7 GPA, but they said before admitting that anything below 3.8 they wouldn't accept.
Oh, okay. So just to cover the all of the exams that you had to took, can you tell us a bit about the language exams, the TOEFL or?
Okay, so I think it might be a bit different in my situation because I'm a US citizen, so I wasn't required to take any of those. So if maybe Burak knows better about this, but if Burak, you can add anything to this.
Yeah, so we did talk about that for a bit. The cutoff varies by university. It's a binary pass-fail kind of thing. So in most places, 100 will be sufficient. I know Oxford requires a 109. Some places go down to 80, 90, but it's more of a pass or fail thing. But of course, if you're going to be a teaching assistant or something, if you have like a teaching assistantship ready, I think they look at the speaking score in particular as well. So it's just something to keep in mind.
All right, and before moving on to our last question in this part, we already asked Burak, but for you, Deniz, especially, what was the timeline for application like?
Yeah.
For your university.
Before I answer that, I don't think I answered your previous question fully because you asked about the reference letters and research
motivation
and
letter as well.
I want to touch a bit on that. As far as I understand, the references are the most important. So having good references, and good references doesn't mean that you have to get it from a very high profile professor, but you need to get it from someone who actually knows you and knows your capability. That's more important. So references are definitely extremely important because they don't only write you a letter, but they call up, they talk to the professors over there. And so if, for example, I think that Professor Refet Gürkaynak called up and talked to someone at LSE, and so they looked at my application, and while looking at it, they had a different eye to it. So I think having a good relationship with your professor is extremely important. Research, of course, is extremely important, but research is more important to get a reference and to get a good reference, and to see if you actually like it or not. Of course, it will be appreciated, but at the master's level, I think it's not extremely mandatory. I think for PhD, it's more mandatory. So I think if I would have to rank everything, I would say references is number 1. Number 2 is the courses that you've taken and your GPA. And number 3, I mean, GRE is a cutoff, so it's binary. So GRE isn't important at all, or it's extremely important if you are below the cutoff. And that's it, I think. And for your second question, the timeline. As I said earlier, I was extremely lucky because I knew what I wanted very early on. Starting from 2nd grade, I knew what I wanted to do and I knew the procedures, how to proceed. So during the summer, I took GRE and I was lucky enough to get the score that I wanted immediately for master's. For PhD, I took the GRE again. But so I think it's important to give you some time to like first take the GRE and give you some time. If you don't get the score that you wanted, you might want to take the GRE again. So I took the GRE the 3rd year summer, so the summer between the 3rd year and the 4th year. And so that gave me a chance, even if I didn't get the score I wanted, I could take the GRE test again. And then I started preparing my statement of purpose the 1st semester. And for me, my applications was a rolling basis. So I finished them immediately. In October, I think I was finished with all my applications.
Wow, and those are just great. And can you tell us a bit about your program and your curriculum? We already talked a bit about this with Burak, so I'm asking you specifically, and maybe the field of concentration before moving on to the more detailed questions we have about your program.
Yes, of course. So the program that I went to is called LSE Econometrics and Mathematical Economics. And so my course consists of mathematics in majority. So I took a lot of econometric courses and mathematical economics. I took 4 courses: international, microeconomics, macroeconomics, and econometrics. But all 4 of them, we had a lot of math inside of it. So we weren't specialized. LSE isn't a very specialized place. I think it has its strengths in every area, so it's good in that sense. So do you want me to go into further detail, or are you guys going to ask me later on?
I think if you want, at least for the courses, if you want, you can go on detail, yeah.
Okay, so in LSE, the system was that the 4 courses, it's a year-long course. So I started the 4 courses at the beginning. Before that, we had something called the introductory course. In some places, this is called the math camp. And so I took 3 courses during the math camp, or the introductory course. And those were micro, macro, and metrics again. It's like a boot camp. They prepare you so that everyone starts at the same level at the beginning of the semester. And if you get a grade below a certain point, then they kick you out of the program. And so we started with 30 people, and I think like 10 people dropped out. Not all of them dropped out because they got a low grade, but it was extremely intense. So classes would start at 8 and then finish at 5, and then we would stay until midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and then go to bed, and then the next morning it's the same thing. And then at the end of this, you take an exam. So they give you the 3 weeks to prepare you and also to scare you, because those 3 weeks were the worst weeks at LSE. After that, it was much more chill. But they do that so that people who don't really want to do math and don't really want to do academics leave. And so it's a good 3 weeks for you to understand if you really want to do this or not. It's the most intense. So after we passed the first semester, we had to decide on an elective course, and I decided on international economics, and the other 3 courses were mandatory. Since our program is called Econometrics and Mathematical Economics, our course was, our econometrics course was a course where LSE PhD students who specialize in econometrics take this course. So they would say, our professors said that the courses we were taking were actually a 2nd year PhD level courses. So, I mean, I'm not sure if this is true or not because I didn't do a PhD, but that's at least what they said. We had courses, every course we had 3 hours per week, and we had pretty long breaks during winter, and then after COVID happened, so everyone was home anyways. But there's no assignments and nothing in between, which I think is very weird as someone who went through Bilkent, because we had quizzes, homeworks constantly. But at LSE, it's the opposite. So they give you nothing. There's only assignments, but you don't have to do them. They're not graded. You don't hand them in. You just do them by yourself. And then at the end of the term, they give you an exam, and that exam is that's 100% of your grade.
I think that's pretty characteristic of the UK, because the exact same thing actually goes for us. You know, the first surprise that I had was the lack of quizzes and the lack of homework assignments. But towards the end of the term, and the second term, when we had our core course examinations, like, it was hell on earth. I mean, it was probably the most intense 3-4 weeks in my life. And there was COVID on top of that. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's like that in the US, in Europe, but in the UK, that's like definitely the big characteristic. You can just not go to any of the lectures, not do any of the assignments all year, but those exams are going to be intense and 100% of your grade.
Yeah, so if you're super smart, and if you can do everything beforehand, then you don't have to go to any lectures, do anything, just take the exam and you're all set, basically. But if you're someone who needs the push to study, if you need homeworks and quizzes to study, then you might find it a bit difficult. And a lot of people find it difficult at LSE because everything's on you. So the professors say, if you want to study, you study. If not, you fail. But that's basically how the system works.
Yeah, so you have to be really self-disciplined in that system, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, Deniz, you already answered the question that now I'm gonna ask. Maybe Burak can take the lead, but can you like describe your typical day now, before Corona, let's say, as a master's student, like in terms of your workload, also your like daily routine? Do you have a like normal social life and stuff?
Yeah, so the way it would work is Mondays through Thursdays, 9 to 5, we'd have courses all day, every day. No, it's not mandatory, obviously, but my day would usually involve getting up at 8:30, riding my bike to the university, and then sitting through a total of 6 hours of lectures per day from 9 to 5. On Fridays, we had networking events and, these finance specific speaker events and whatnot. So that was a nice break from all of it. But, on weekdays, it really depends on you. So I tried to take up rowing actually because, it's an Oxford tradition, rowing, but then I found that I'm not smart enough to not study and carry along with the curriculum. So I had to make more time for studying. So I had to quit that early. But as far as your social life goes, yeah, it's not that big of an issue. You can go out 2-3 days a week. There's a great pub culture in the UK, by the way. So if you're into that, it's definitely the place to be. On weekends, depending on the particular time, there was usually something organized by the business school or by the university for us. It would generally be events relating to that, or going out to London and just having fun over the weekend. It's not impossible, but towards the examination period, it gets more difficult to actually balance those things.
For me, I'm not a representative of a normal person. I'm extremely nerdy, and finance people are more cool, definitely, than more academic people. So my day
you guys
usually
are smarter, so.
What?
You guys are the smart ones, so.
Well, the smarter and the poorer ones.
If you say so.
But my day usually consists of waking up, going to school, staying at school, eating, staying at school more, and then going back to bed. So everyone in my program they weren't so social. So we all worked together. So our socialization was going to the library and studying all together. Occasionally we would go out, but London's pretty expensive anyway, so my classmates wouldn't really want to go out anyways. So, I mean, I guess it depends on who you are and what you want to do.
Perfect. Then I suppose we were gonna ask something about like the work culture, the studying culture in UK, but I think you guys already have answered that. If there's anything you want to add to that, please go on, but if not, I can ask the next question as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask the next question then. What are the research opportunities in your uni and also like in UK in general?
Burak, do you want to start?
So, yeah, okay, I'll start. So research assistantships are advertised regularly and people have no trouble finding them generally. In fact, a lot of people just go up to a professor, having read one of their articles, and say, I'm actually interested in this topic. Do you have any projects going on? And sure enough, that's how a lot of people land research assistantships. Now, that being said, the financial economics people, being more private sector focused, not a lot of people actually pursued those opportunities. but they're definitely there. And the university supports pretty much anything that you do under the supervision of a professor. So I'd say that the research opportunities, are more than enough to satisfy anyone.
At LSE, I think what Burak said is pretty applicable at LSE as well. So if you want to study, wherever you go, there'll be an opportunity because professors are looking for students to work with them, especially if you say that you want to work for free. That's like amazing to them because usually you would be paid to work for them.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you get paid surprisingly well. I think it was like £18 an hour for a research assistant who's a master's student. I know a lot of people like covered their living expenses that way.
Yes, a lot of people do that. So research opportunities is great. Other than that, there are regular seminars, PhD student seminars where professors from other places come and join. So whatever you want to do, it's pretty open. The professors are pretty open to work with you. That being said, if you go to a big university, there are a lot of PhD students as well. So if you go up to a professor, they might not want to talk to you if they think that you're not interested as much. But if, as Burak said, if you go with a paper in mind, have read what they've done, then they would be interested because that's what they work on their whole life. It's like their babies, their papers. So if you go to them, tell them, oh, I read this, I think it's very interesting, then they'll be very happy to listen to you a bit more.
Okay, so since you guys talked about some people covering their expenses with, doing research assistantship, and can you guys talk about, what would be the overall cost of studying in the UK and the financial burden and your tuition fee, the housing, living expenses, all that stuff?
And also the scholarships, if possible.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. So to start, well, the tuition, if it's not a research master's, it's more expensive, I can tell you that. In fact, I'll just be completely open about it. The tuition for my program, I think, was £42,000 per year. Yeah, I see Deniz's facial expression there. But the nice thing about it being part of the business school is that you have a lot of opportunities to get scholarships. So the way scholarships work in Oxford is, you don't get a centralized scholarship from the university, but you have the university might give you something, your college might give you something, student societies, local organizations might give you something. So through all those, I managed to get a scholarship worth about half of the cost of attendance. The other half, I took a loan. I took out a loan. And if you're studying something business related, prodigyfinance.com, write it down. They do give you loans if they see an earning potential. I think you can finance it at like 8% per year. So it's a pretty good deal. But besides that, the general expenses that every student would have, for me, rent isn't as bad in Oxford as it is in London, but I was paying £700 a month to have a room in basically what was a mansion that's shared with 12 other students. Every 3 days I'd go shopping to Tesco. I usually spend about £20, so that's what, £200 per month-ish on groceries. Every time you go out, it'll be maybe £10-15 if you go for 1 or 2 pints of beer. So I think the recommended range was 12 to 15,000 pounds per year for a 9-month year for living expenses.
The living expenses in London is much more expensive. Of course, it depends on how you want to live. But I lived in a studio apartment, I think. I mean, not even a studio. It was a room, but it had a desk with a stove on it, so I could cook. And I had my own bathroom. And it's heartbreaking to say, but I paid £1,200 for that room. It was extremely small. I think it was like 12 meter squares. It was very small, but it did the job. Also, going from somewhere to somewhere is extremely expensive in London as well. If you need to get an Oyster card, and I think I spent at least £100 each month for transportation. The school cost, I think, 25,000 per year, and they barely give any scholarships at LSE. But a lot of people get scholarships from their own country. For example, Jean Monnet, this year they didn't give any to people who were going to the UK. But there are other scholarships. There's Tubitak scholarship and other scholarships. I didn't go with a scholarship, so I paid the full tuition. But usually the maximum usually you would never get a scholarship from LSE. The maximum I heard so far was a 20% scholarship, and that's for people who can afford. So if you can afford, if you're from a minority country, then they would give you the scholarship.
All right, so now we're on to the career questions. And which career paths can you follow after finishing your program for economics and business economics?
So for financial economics, generally it's, well, so like I said, 5-10% maybe go into academia every year. But besides that, the overwhelming majority goes into the finance industry. So the bankers, the traders, the investment managers, the hedge fund people, the private equity people of the world. I think about 40 to 50%-ish go for that kind of role. Consulting is also a big one and a really preferred one in recent years in particular. So maybe 20-30% go there. And the remaining is just, various companies like technology companies, could be energy companies. So in my particular case, if I would talk for myself, I am speaking with a bunch of trading companies right now, probably going into commodity trading, either in Switzerland or the Netherlands. But yeah, this year was a particularly bad year, by the way, to be aspiring for the private sector. I think like 50% of the class didn't have a job lined up, whereas, it would be 2 to 3% in regular years. But yeah, from our program, at least, the Oxford brand name carries a lot of weight. So you can go to Europe. Some people have even managed to land positions in the United States. But generally speaking, the average or the median student would probably end up in London as an investment banker.
My program is a bit different. When we came, we did a survey, and I think 70% of our class went to do academia, and the other 30%, some investment banking, some data analysts, some people want to do consulting. But as Burak said, at LSE as well, this year was particularly extremely bad. So a lot of my friends are unemployed right now. But I think even if you're unemployed for a little while, having the LSE network is extremely important. They have networking events weekly or maybe even daily, where if you really want to go into a job instead of academics, then it's very important that you go to these events, because as you build friends, build networks, then going into a job, you can get a reference, which helps a lot, actually. So yeah, my program particularly, it was more academia focused. But even this year, not a lot of people. We were I think 20 people, and only 3 people were able to get admitted to a PhD program. And usually it's more like 10 out of the 11 people get into a PhD program.
So are the PhD programs getting more competitive as well, now that the private sector has basically, lost all hope?
Yes, definitely. The PhD program, it's not only due to COVID, But in general, a lot of people, since a lot of people already have a master's, they actually want for research opportunities. We want to see research in your CV as well. So a lot of people go do 1 year of research next to a professor, and that helps a lot. So it really depends. I mean, but PhD is definitely becoming more and more competitive. So while doing your master's, if you can do research with your professor, then it's really good. I had a friend, he did research with a professor at LSE, and prior to that, he went to Harvard for 1 year and did research over there, and he still got rejected from Harvard. And so he's not going to do a PhD this year. So it's extremely competitive, and it's different with every circumstance. And now that some places want to admit minorities instead of white males, so you have to write like a diversity letter and tell them why you're different. So being a woman in academia helps a lot. Being not white in academia helps a lot too. So it depends.
Yeah, that's a good word of advice, actually. So if you're ever submitting job applications or, or school applications in the UK, it helps to always tick the other box instead of white. Just play the Middle Eastern card. No, I'm Turkish. I'm not white. I'm Middle Eastern. It helps.
Yes, it really helps. So it really helps. Yeah.
Deniz, I have a question. You said like having a research during your master's is actually really helpful. And also you said I knew a professor in Cambridge and like now I'm pursuing that path. Did you do any research during your master's, like during that 1 year?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't do any research at LSE. I applied while I was an undergraduate. I applied to a master's program at Cambridge as well, and I was accepted to the same professor that I'm going to PhD now to Cambridge. Okay. So I knew him from undergraduate, and I've been emailing him back and forth. We've Skyped a couple of times. So I didn't know him due to a research opportunity next to him, but because I emailed him, I was interested in what he was doing and stuff like that.
Okay, but you had prior connection to, of course,
yeah,
like
yeah. But a lot of people do research in between. Our program was very squished, and half of our year was gone because of COVID. So not a lot of people was able to do that. So people who knew professors prior to coming at LSE were more advantageous at that time, because when you go to a professor and tell them that you want to work with them, they want to know if you're capable of doing research with them. So if you just go and just ask them, it's different with having 1 semester in hand and going with them with good marks and asking to work with them later on. So people who knew the professors prior were able to do research with them. I mean, I didn't even ask anyone to do research. But.
And also, like, you clearly stated that you guys were both sure what you wanted to do in the future. But for a student who is yet undecided, like, how can we know that we can do a master's, or like maybe we should start from a PhD?
Well, that would be a particularly difficult position to be in, but a word of advice would be to definitely try your luck on a research project. Do you enjoy doing it? Do you enjoy the day-to-day hustle of research? And more importantly, are you capable of doing like the hardcore analysis, the math involved? If you're not good at that, then you're probably better off sticking with a master's to at least build up a background of some sort. But yeah, I'd say those are the main criteria.
For me, I always say if someone seems like they know everything that they're doing and they're very stuck with something, then that's bad, and never trust that person, because that means that they're not thinking out of the box and they're not thinking about different opportunities. And I think going to master's, I really understood that about myself, because before going to master's, I really had everything set in my mind. Even as a freshman, I was like, first year I'm going to do this, second year I'm going to do this, third year, and fourth year, and everything will be set for me. But that's really not the case. Applying for PhDs, I was extremely confused on what to do, what I want to do, because all these years, all I thought about was academia, and I didn't think about anything else. I didn't even think about the opportunity of doing anything else. So I think if I could go back in time, go back as an undergraduate, I would try to explore more. So if you're someone who's not sure of what they want to do, then hats off to you, actually. That's really good. You should be worried. You should think about different opportunities. Don't have something set in mind. And even if you do, still look at your peers, look at what they're doing, look at others, and see if they're happy or not. And even at LSC, I wish I went to more networking events, tried to see what they're doing and research more. So never have something in mind that you're extremely set on. Of course, it helped me a lot in my applications that I had something to set. But after a point, if you're not happy with that, for example, with me, if I'm not happy with academia, even if you have that set in your mind, then it doesn't make sense. So it makes more sense to look at other opportunities. I mean, I'm going to academia and I think I'm happy there, but I had a crisis a couple months back thinking of why didn't I think about other opportunities? So it's good to think about other opportunities.
Burcu, you have one more question, right? Do you?
Yes.
Okay.
I suppose. So can you talk about the top schools in UK and about their, maybe if you know about them, maybe their graduates and what are they doing now, and did they focus on like micro or macro? I don't know. Can you fill us a bit about that?
Well, so speaking for Oxford, I know that the econometrics department is particularly good. I know that our auction theory professor is like world renowned, actually. So microeconomics and game theory, I think we're pretty good in those areas as well. LSC, as far as I know, has pretty much everything, everything on economics. I know that Imperial and Cambridge are very well regarded, but I don't know the particulars, especially about the academic side. So I think Deniz could probably provide more input on that.
Yeah, on the academic side, as Burak said, LSC is known to have a very diverse set of professors. So I don't think they're very focused on one area, whereas in other universities, a lot of universities find it useful to be focused in one area. But LSC has a lot of diversity in it. So especially the international team, the macro team. The macro team has Wouter Den Haan and has Ben Mol right now. They just hired Ben Mol from Princeton, and he's a great professor, a young great professor to work with. I was a student. They hired Nobuhiro Kiyotaki came for 1 year at LSE. He's also a macroeconomist. He's a brilliant mind, and they say that he's going to get a Nobel Prize, hopefully. I was a student as well. And in microeconomics, LSE has Piccione. He's also very known in the microeconomic theory literature. So LSE is very diverse. Oxford, Burak knows better than me, so I won't add on to what he said. Cambridge actually lost a lot of professors to other universities. So Cambridge is actually was on a downfall for many years. But I think doing a PhD, the professor is more important than the school. So even if you don't go to a brilliant school, then having a good professor, a professor who's known in their field, is very important. So there are a couple good macroeconomists at Cambridge as well. So I think at Cambridge, macroeconomics is more a priority there. Imperial, I'm not really sure of either. So
I know they have like a lot of mathematical stuff going on there. I know it's mostly an engineering school, so probably something computational going on there.
Yeah, maybe, I'm not really sure.
Okay, and I think that was all the questions that we had. So like, if you guys have any more advice that you would like to share or anything that you missed, like please go ahead. And also if anyone who has any questions can just like directly write at the chat and we'll just answer those questions as well. Or can raise their hand and we'll unmute them too.
Okay, so I'd just like to add that don't doubt yourself because you're at Bilkent. You're going to be with all these smart people from around the world, but Bilkent is actually surprisingly well regarded. So I actually have an anecdote on this. The first day of courses, our advisor my advisor sends us an email, his 5-6 advisees an email to, get to know us in Israel. And he asked us, which universities are you from? There was me, there was someone from Cambridge, from Mannheim, from Bocconi, and from Duke University. And he asked, so how do you guys feel about your mathematical background? And he said, Cambridge and Bilkent, I'm not asking you guys, I'm sure you guys are already fine. So, Bilkent is surprisingly well regarded. Refet Gürkaynak and Semih Koray are really famous. And my financial econometrics professor was actually Javit Pakel's thesis advisor, I believe. So, Bilkent is surprisingly well connected. Our professors are amazing. Don't expect the same teaching quality, honestly, as you would find in Bilkent. The teaching quality in Bilkent is better. So, you're going to have to be self-motivated and it's going to be intense. And it's not going to be as, I don't want to say spoon-fed, but it's not going to be as straightforward as it would be in Bilkent. I can assure you that.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Burak said. Bilkent University is a great place to be from, and the courses that we took were amazing. We have great professors there, great teachers, especially really taken the fact that you can go up to a professor and talk to them and be a friend to them, because that's very important, and that's a very good networking opportunity to do as well. And other than that, I want to say that everyone has their own path, and even though we're talking here and there are a bunch of different webinar series on different people, everyone really is unique. And so don't try to look up to someone and say, I want to do this, I want to go their route. Do whatever you want to do. Try to talk with as many people as you can, and never doubt yourself, because whatever path you choose, you're going to excel in it.
I wasn't expecting this to be this motivational, but yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. Do any of you, the students, have any question? Yeah, okay, good.
I think it's in the chat for Burak. I would like to ask.
Yes, Oz, are you gonna?
What is the difference between financial engineering and financial economics? Yeah, so financial engineering actually applies the theoretical concepts in financial economics. In financial economics, you get to learn why options are priced in the way they are, for example. Whereas in financial engineering, you would write the program, the computer program that goes ahead and calculates the option price. So I want to say it's pretty much theoretical versus applied. Having said that, it's easy to transition from one area to another. So, you can start out in financial engineering, maybe do a PhD and then focus on financial economics, or like me, start in financial economics and do something that's related to the financial engineering side. But it might be a bit more mathematically intensive in financial engineering, particularly on statistics, whereas financial economics will involve to some extent, the proof writing and whatnot, the theoretical concepts that we know in economics. And I think there's a question for Deniz.
I think Oz added to what you said, so
Yeah.
maybe answer that and then I'll go.
So they might be easily substituted, and after graduation, one can take the job of the other. So for quantitative trading firms in particular, they're looking for financial engineers, but they're just looking for the people who can do the best math, honestly. And in that case, they'd be taking math PhDs and financial engineers, and they kind of look down on maybe financial economics as being a social science as opposed to a hard discipline. But generally speaking, in terms of skill set and in terms of the knowledge base, I would say yes. Yes.
Okay, so someone asked, M5 Khan asked, okay, wait. Sorry. Okay. M5 Khan asked, Deniz, you said you had an opportunity to be in research projects when you were in 2nd grade. How did you create that chance? So I'm not sure if you're talking about my internship with Professor Daran Ejimoğlu or with Professor Refet Gürkaynak, but I'll answer both if you want me to. Any of it, okay. I'll answer both. So with Professor Refet Gürkaynak, a lot of people go up to him and a lot of people go and try to talk to him. So it's important to go and talk to him, but be different than others and be actually interested in what he's doing and show that you're interested in what he's doing. So maybe, for example, he has a very famous paper, GSS, it's Gürkaynak, Sack and Swanson, 2005. You should definitely read that paper. Refet Hoca is known worldwide for this paper. So go up and ask him about that or anything that you're interested in, actually. And go with good grades, maybe, if you have good grades. If not, it doesn't really matter. But go to office hours, not only Refet Hoca, but other people's office hours. Tell them that you're interested in doing research if you are interested in doing that, or ask them what they would advise you to do. As far as with Professor Daran Ejimoğlu, I just told you the story, but I'll tell it again for maybe the latecomers. But he was in school and I ran across him, and later on I introduced myself, I talked to him briefly, I took a picture with him, and then a week later I went to Refet Hoca and I told him, because I already had a good relationship with Refet Hoca, I went to him and I asked him if I could do an internship with Daran Ejimoğlu and if he could email him. And he directly said, okay. I emailed Professor Daran Ejimoğlu afterwards. He responded. So I think going to your professors, and even if you don't have someone particular in your mind, going to professors and say, I want to do research abroad during the summer. Do you have any do you know anyone that's looking for someone to hire for the summer? Would be extremely useful. You could get the answer no, and don't be afraid of that. You can ask someone else, go or ask again another time. So some opportunities come and go.
Okay, I think Ubaid is asking, should we start the application process during fall of 4th year or after graduation? Well, it would depend on whether or not you want to go directly into a master's program. I mean, some people choose to work for a year in our particular program. For research masters, I know that people consider doing like 1-year research fellowships or research assistantships. But if you don't have something planned in between 4th year and next year that you would be starting, then, well, if you apply after graduation, you're already too late, and you should probably be applying like early in the fall semester of the 4th year.
Yes, I agree with Burak.
Okay, we have one from Cardell, I suppose, right? Does enrolling in mathematics minor program differentiate you considerably if you want to be an academician? I think, Deniz, maybe this would be more of your question.
The answer is yes. Even if you do, even if you don't do a mathematics minor, taking a lot of math courses and taking the courses from the math minor is very important. Some courses in the math minor are irrelevant, but but most of them are relevant. Asking your professors about which courses they advise you to take. Usually, if you want to go into academia, eventually you'll have to take real analysis. In fact, many major universities like MIT, Stanford, even LSE, Cambridge, Oxford, they won't admit you if you don't take real analysis. And before real analysis, you need to take advanced calculus. So, and if you want to have real analysis in your transcript, then you need to take advanced calculus, I think 1 year before. So the third year fall semester, right? But I didn't have that in my hand while I was graduating, so I didn't take real analysis. So that's why I did masters before. So if you take real analysis, and I mean, you could talk with your professors, but they might advise you to directly apply for PhD instead of masters first, then PhD.
Can I just ask you, Deniz, out of personal curiosity, what's the deal with real analysis? I mean, I hear it all the time with regard to PhD applications, but is it the proofwriting aspect that you guys use a lot? Or
I think proofwriting, writing proofs, you learn a bit in advanced calculus, but it takes time for you to process. It's like a new language, so you need to learn how to do proofs, learn how to write mathematically, learn how to write things very precise and very correctly. So advanced calculus prepares you to real analysis, but real analysis is basically econometrics, microeconomics, and macroeconomics, maybe not much as macroeconomics, but definitely econometrics and microeconomics. You use a lot of real analysis. So, I mean, math is extremely important if you want to do theory. Even if you want to do empirical work, real analysis is still very important, because when you're writing papers, if you only have an empirical paper, you're not going to be able to publish it somewhere good. So you have to have both a good theory and empiric. So real analysis is extremely important.
So maybe we have the time for just one more question. If anyone has another one, that you can just raise your hand and we can unmute you, or maybe you can unmute yourselves. I don't know. And if you guys have the time, of course, Burak, Deniz, are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, of course. I came late, so I can't say anything about that. I can stay 30 more minutes.
Yeah, same.
I suppose no one has questions though, right?
I guess that means that you guys went beyond our participants' expectations.
You covered everything, more than everything.
Maybe
Yeah.
everybody saving their questions for the PhD people.
Or we're not interesting enough.
No. Honestly, thank you so
No.
much, first of all, coming. But this was more than we asked. We covered everything. You guys covered everything. It was really detailed. So thank you so much, both of you, for coming.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and sorry again for the delay.
Dennis.
Don't worry about it. And thank you so much.
All right, then I suppose this is the end of the seminar, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Again, thank you so much, Deniz and Burak, for coming, and good luck with your studies, Burak, for after Corona, whatever you want to do, and also Deniz with your PhD as well. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck to everyone here.
Thank you. All right, so I suppose, shall I end the meeting? Yeah.
Sure, but before that, I want to announce the next session that we have in our webinar series, which is on the 26th of this month, August, which will be about the PhD in the United States. So be sure to keep an eye out.
I think there's one before that. I think it was the 17th. I'm not sure, right?
I was also going to ask with Ömer Karaduma on postdoctoral.
Yeah, we have that as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
The order is different, but we have one on 17th as well. Okay, then I suppose thank you all so much for coming, and see you in our next seminar.